Good morning. I'm Donna McClurkin. I'm here representing the Sunday Services Committee. Happy May. I was reflecting on how lovely it is pulling into our parking lot and then walking up to the church, seeing everything in bloom. It's just so beautiful. And I feel so grateful for all the people that invest countless hours to make our grounds so welcoming. You are all welcome here, whether in person or on Zoom or later on YouTube. We're very glad you're here.
As we begin, I have many announcements. This next month is the busiest we've had in our church in a very long time. One highlight of the next month is our congregational meeting, our annual congregational meeting, which will happen 3 weeks from today, right here. As we adjusted our bylaws, it means people can vote in person or via Zoom, so participate in whichever way makes sense for you, members. The agenda for that meeting is electing new members of the board and nominating committee and passing a budget. And the church email that goes out this Friday will include the full agenda, including the voting policy that will guide us as we live into this new way of doing our congregational business together. I also want to let you know that the budget that the Finance Committee is bringing to the board for approval has a significant deficit in it. And I want to warn you so you can do the emotional work you need to do before you see that. This is because we're not expecting there'll be another payroll protection program, which helped us through the pandemic. And we don't know how much we can expect through our various fundraisers, like the church bazaar and building rentals this coming year. We have significant reserves, and so it's possible to do this for a year as we figure out what this new phase of the pandemic means for our church and for our finances. And we can't do this forever, obviously, but your leaders think it could be a reasonable choice for you all to make for 1 year. So please watch for that email on Friday and look for the opportunities to talk with your board leaders and your finance leaders about that, and bring your questions, bring your ideas, and read the new voting policy and come to the meeting. On May 14th is our White Elephant sale, and today is the first day of drop-offs for that sale. So if you are like me and have been keeping boxes in your basement for a year or maybe more, saving up for this sale for the first time since the pandemic, it is time to bring them in. So that's starting today, and there are several drop-off periods throughout the week. There are times to sign up to help, to receive items, to sort items, and to help with the sale on the 14th. I encourage you to do that. And the last piece is on May 15th, so 2 weeks from today, we're having an event that we're calling Listening Across Generations. As we gather together in new ways, in person and online, I and other church leaders are noticing that different generations in our church have had very different experiences over the past few years. As a parent of young children, I know my story is very different from many others who don't have that experience. And we're coming back to church with different hopes and different needs and just different lives. And a chance to have thoughtful conversations about that feels really important right now. So we're going to have an in-person chance for conversation on May 15th after church. We will feed you. There will be childcare, and on May 17th, which is a Tuesday in the evening, on Zoom. All of this is in your newsletter and all of the other ways we share our information. And now, let us sing.
I invite you to rise in body and spirit. or Spirit. This song is a call and response. It is Lead with Love. Many of us here know this song already, and I'm counting on your musicianship to help teach it to the folks who don't know it yet. So we start with a little rhythm. Just me. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. With me. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with, one more time. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other. I'm gonna add this low part. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. Keep going. One foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. The path is there. Keep clapping. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with. Put one foot in front of the other. You gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead. Last verse. I know you're scared, and I'm scared too, but here I am, right next to you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other, in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. Last time, you gotta put one foot in front of the other one. One foot, and lead with love. Thank you.
If you're lighting a chalice at home, we encourage you to type in the chat box, "A chalice is lit," in your neighborhood, city, street, wherever you are. Spilling the Light by Teresa I. Soto. Some people are used to keeping rules. Don't cross the street when the light is red. Only sensible. It turns out that keeping rules isn't the same as keeping covenant, which asks us, instead of keeping a bright line, to keep our promises. To what have we promised ourselves? To this moment in time and place, to this community, and even tenderly interconnected, this planet. We promise ourselves to the idea that we are each and all human beings. We promise that there is something moving between us that we cannot tame and cannot measure. The chalice is a reminder that what flame we keep inside us cannot light the way. A light must spill to shine. The thing you must be is yourself, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone, as though you are made of something hard and unforgivable. You are human. You belong right here, right now. And together we will chase away the sickness, the secrets, and leave only the open possibility that the future is a space for growth.
In addition to our chalice here at People's Church today, we have a chalice lit at Brook Drive, a chalice in Texas Township, a chalice in Parkview Hills, Richland Township, Portage, South Haven, Bloomington Township, and Oshtemo, a light alongside us this morning. Our story this morning is It's Not What You Believe, But How by Gary Kowalski. Each of us comes into this world without a whole lot of beliefs, and we gather them up over our lives, and we hold them in our belief bag in different ways. Some of us are given our beliefs all at once, and then we close up our bag tight to make sure nothing else can ever get in. Nothing will threaten what we hold in our heart as true. Now, others of us open our belief bags wide, and we'll take just about anything in. The things that were told in our family growing up, that thing we heard on the radio one time or saw on Facebook, or anything. It just all comes in there all the time, willy-nilly. Now, others get our beliefs and fill up our bag of ideas and then we turn it into a weapon and hit other people over the head with it. If you don't measure up, if you don't believe the way I believe or act in the way that I think all humans are supposed to act. Beliefs can do that. They can turn into weapons. And we, as Unitarian Universalists, when we are doing it right, which isn't always, but we try, it's something else. We have the beliefs we're given when we're small, and we keep our bag open, but we're thoughtful about what goes in and what goes out. With a new experience, a new learning, we might add some new beliefs. Or with a new experience or a new learning, we might take some of the things that we thought we believed and get rid of them because they don't work anymore. We keep our belief bags open to new truths, new revelations, new ideas, open to the idea that as we live, what we think is true will change and should change. And that is how we do it at our best. We keep our belief bags open, thoughtful about what goes in, what goes out, and what we know to be true, and not holding it too tightly that there isn't room for things to come in and out and grow and change. And that is our story. People's people are generous people. This week, I was in a lot of conversations about our budget. And in one of those conversations, someone pointed out, it is so amazing that we never have to pay for lawn care around here on our 20 acres, not all of which are lawn, of course, but it is no small thing to keep these grounds organized, this lawn mowed and not incredible chaos. And there's a lot of other things like that around here that don't make it into the budget because people just do them. We have volunteers who keep this building going, who make our AV system work, who install our new ventilation system that makes it safer for us to gather in person. So many things, so many skills and talents that people bring to accomplish together what none of us could accomplish alone. And we also know that we can't do everything around here through volunteer labor. The electric company doesn't let you pay your bill with time. And so we also ask people to give, in addition to with their talents and their time, their money. So I invite you to continue to be the generous people that you are. The offering will now be received.
Please join me in giving thanks for all that sustains us. From the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love, which none of us can accomplish alone.
As we come out of silence, I invite you to sing with me where you're seated. We are singing number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come
For What Binds Us by Jane Hirschfield. There are names for what binds us: strong forces, weak forces. Look around, you can see them. The skin that forms in a half-empty cup, nails rusting into the places they join, joints dovetailed on their own weight. The way things stay so solidly wherever they've been set down. And gravity, scientists say, is weak. And see how the flesh grows back across a wound with a great vehemence, more strong than the simple, untested surface before. There's a name for it on horses when it comes back darker and raised: proud flesh. As all flesh is proud of its wounds, wears them as honors given out after battle, small triumphs pinned to the chest. And when two people have loved each other, see how it is like a scar between their bodies, stronger, darker, and proud. How the black cord makes of them a single fabric that nothing can tear or mend. The following is People's Church Bond of Union. It was written by Reverend Caroline Bartlett Crane in 1892 and has had only minor changes since then. Every member of the People's Church signs this bond of union to join the church. Earnestly desiring to develop in ourselves and in the world honest, reverent thought, faithfulness to our highest conception of right living, the spirit of love and service to all people, and allegiance towards all the interests of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and purest lives of humanity. We join ourselves together, hoping to help one another in all good things and advance the cause of pure and practical religion in the community. We base our union upon no creed test, but upon the purpose herein expressed, and welcome all who wish to join us to help establish truth, righteousness, and love in all the world. And this is the covenant of the People's Church Board of Trustees. We convene bringing our best selves, prepared, listening, and open as we work together to further the mission and vision of People's Church.
And our covenants continue this morning. This is a portion of the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, of which People's Church is a member. Article 2, Principles and Purposes. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. The living tradition we share draws from many sources. Direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbor as ourselves. Humanist teachings which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science and warn us against idolatries of the mind or spirit. Spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythm of nature. Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. As free congregations, we enter into this covenant, promising to one another our mutual trust and support. Purposes. The Unitarian Universalist Association shall devote its resources to and exercise its corporate powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. The primary purpose of the association is to serve the needs of its member congregations, organize new congregations, extend and strengthen Unitarian Universalist institutions, and implement its principles. Inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcomes all persons and commit to structuring congregational and associational life in ways that empower and enhance everyone's participation. Freedom of belief. Nothing herein shall be deemed to infringe upon the individual freedom of belief, which is inherent in the Universalist and Unitarian heritages, or to conflict with any statements of purpose, covenant, or bond of union used by any congregation, unless such is used as a creedal test. This is the covenant adopted by the staff of People's Church. Covenant. The People's Church staff covenant to advance the mission and vision of People's Church. Knowing that we are always seen as representatives of the church, we will respect one another and the people and values we serve. We will be good stewards of time and other resources. We will respect the diversity of work styles and ways of being among us and among members and friends of the congregation. Best practices. In our work, we will assume good intentions and attend to impact. Practice clear, open, direct communication, listen actively and avoid triangulation. Hold confidentiality unless someone is a danger to themselves or others. Avoid sharing anonymous feedback. Put events on the church calendar, honor newsletter deadlines, and try to make one another's jobs easier as we are able. And finally, in our Festival of Covenants this morning, this is the covenant of our elementary religious education class that is meeting right now. Participate. Be kind and nice. Use kind words. Treat everyone equally. Be fair. Be good listeners. Take care of your needs. Stay safe. Stay together. Share discoveries.
Our next song is number 145, As Tranquil Streams. As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek us, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless greed, free from the social code that fails to serve the cause of human need. A freedom that reveals the past, but trusts the dawning future more, and puts the soul in search of truth, adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the proclaim the truth that makes us free.
What is a covenant, and what is a creed, and what is the difference? What does it mean to sign a bond of union, to be a member of People's Church? And what actually binds us together if we don't believe the same thing? If there's not a creed or a statement of faith that we must sign on to? We are bound together, bound in union by our covenants, the promises that we make to each other, many of which you just heard. There are covenants all throughout this community, an interdependent web of promises. We don't have a creed or a statement of faith. You do not have to believe one particular thing to be a part of People's Church or a Unitarian Universalist. Of course, you cannot believe just anything either and still uphold the promises we make here. Your belief bag, whatever it contains, needs to be managed with care and thought and attention. Why do we make covenants with each other? This form, this way of making promises, takes us into our origins as a tradition, back past our origins as an independent tradition, as Christian dissenters, to the time of the ancient Israelite people. I preached some of this history before, but I love it so much I'm doing it again. So humor me. But it's been about 5 years, so you probably have forgotten, even if you were there. But this is the kind of stuff that makes my religion nerd heart sing. So in the ancient Near East of the 8th century before the Common Era, the Assyrian Empire was the major power, and it conquered much of the surrounding region, including in the year 745 BCE, the ancient kingdom of Israel. And after that conquering, they did what conquering powers usually did then. They imposed a covenant, a series of promises in the form of a vassal treaty. The Israelites promised to pay tributes and to be loyal to the Assyrian king. And that covenant also included curses that the Israelites would impose on themselves if they did not pay the tributes. And so when these sorts of covenants were made, the defeated leaders who agreed to them would cut apart an animal and stand among the pieces of the bleeding flesh, proclaiming, "This is what should happen to us if we do not live into our covenants." So think of that the next time you sign on to a covenant around here. And so an empire's defeat of a pretty minor kingdom thousands of years ago is a story worth telling now because of what happens next. Hosea, a prophet in the Israelite kingdom, proclaimed that the Israelites' covenant is not with the Assyrian Empire, but with their God, Yahweh. This was a radical idea, a radical transformation. The ancient prophet took the tools of the oppressor and used them to tell a story about a chosen people and a God who was with the oppressed, even in defeat. The innovative idea of covenant took the secular treaty between two kingdoms and made it about promises, supernatural promises, and reminded the people of Israel that God, not the Assyrian Empire, was the ultimate authority in their lives. Instead of the Assyrian emperor demanding his subjects' highest loyalty, Yahweh demanded that his followers have no other God before me. Instead of the Assyrian Empire punishing disloyalty, Yahweh would curse those who were unfaithful. This is a reimagination of the burdens imposed by a conquering empire to help the people of Israel tell a new story about their own value and their highest loyalties. And Hosea's idea of covenant with Yahweh spread widely in ancient Israel and nearby regions. People were hungry for a new way to think about what the covenants in their lives meant. And this new idea of covenants with God shaped the writings and stories that we know as the Hebrew Bible. While stories about Moses and Abraham and Noah all existed then and were being told orally, they hadn't taken their current form. And this new idea of covenant shaped how those stories were told and retold and then eventually written down. Because covenants with God are throughout the Hebrew Bible. The God of the Hebrew Bible covenants with Noah after the flood, promising not to destroy the world again and naming the rainbow as a symbol of that promise. That God covenants with Abraham to make the Israelites a chosen people and with Moses at Sinai. Large portions of the book of Deuteronomy are a near word-for-word adaptation of an Assyrian covenant with a conquered people, but they took out the word Assyria and put in Yahweh. And covenant as a religious idea has been with us ever since. And they have continued to evolve from that 3,000 almost year-old form. Jesus at the Last Supper described the cup of wine as the new covenant in my blood, and many Christians remember that covenant in the ritual of communion and in other practices. And jumping over a lot, because I could talk about this for a long time, we're now going to the middle of the 17th century. The Puritans, the people that we can trace our religious roots to on this continent, started to settle new towns. And in the 1630s, people founded Dedham, Massachusetts, a community about 12 miles southwest of Boston on land taken from Native Americans. And once they settled in, they decided their town needed a church. The families there were all strangers to each other, all from different parts of England, and didn't know what kind of church they wanted to be together. What would you do in this situation? Probably something similar to what happened. They formed a discussion group, and they met in someone's home every Thursday night to talk about the most important issues in their community and how they wanted this new church they were dreaming up to respond to them. They had these discussions for nearly a year. They spoke of how their new town could be a place of justice and peace. And then, almost about a year after they started, they touched on their beliefs about God and the Bible. They realized that unity of belief wasn't as important as their commitments to each other, their shared hopes of how they might be together. So when they founded their church, they formalized these commitments and hopes in a covenant. Those who joined the New Chown Church in Dedham would promise to, and this is some archaic language, through ye help ye Lord, live together in this our holy fellowship, according to ye rule of love, in all holy watchfulness over each other, and faithful mutual helpfulness in ye ways of God, for ye spiritual and temporal comfort and good of one another. So these Puritan covenants, which sprung up across New England, marked a new evolution in this form of covenant. There are no curses, obviously. And we do know that the Puritans sometimes expelled people who did not abide by their community norms or who voiced dissenting beliefs, but that wasn't written into the covenant. Another big difference is that the covenant is between the people, not with the people and with God. They describe their hopes and dreams for their community and promise to live into them as much as they can. True, as good Puritans, they wanted God's help to live according to the ways of God, but their promises were to each other. They promised to live according to the rule of love. They promised faithful mutual helpfulness. They promised holy fellowship. And that's not so different from this congregation's covenant, which we call our bond of union, which was written 225 years later. That is the briefest of histories of covenants, about the promises we make to each other. Also, today we're talking about creeds. So again, another of the briefest history. Creeds are a much newer idea, mostly a Christian idea. Creeds are a text that describe the belief that a community holds, sometimes in the form of a creed or a statement of faith, a catechism. Most religions and most wisdom traditions do not have formal creeds the way much of Christianity does. It is largely a Christian practice. For the first few centuries after Jesus' death, the early church was largely too oppressed and too struggling to spend energy on creeds. But in the 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantine, who favored Christianity more than any previous emperor had, mandated that Christian leaders stop fighting amongst themselves and settle all of these differences about belief. And so the bishops gathered to try to work things out. At this gathering, there was a couple of Unitarians. One of them got punched by St. Nicholas, which is another story for another day. But the group of bishops eventually produced what we know now as the Nicene Creed. And this was the moment when leaders who held Unitarian ideas that God is one God, not a Trinity, were deposed and exiled. That's when we formally became a dissenting strain within Christianity and not part of a much more inclusive mainstream. And then to simplify, about almost 2,000 years of church history, Christians have been fighting about words ever since, more or less. Creeds and professions of faith and differences about who and how God is have caused wars and reformations and schisms and made martyrs. These creeds are often the reason why there are so many different kinds of Protestants, with small differences in belief leading to splits. For many, the creeds have become words etched into people's heart that they can recite from memory. I bet if I said the first line of the Nicene Creed right now, the collective would carry it through to the end, because so many of us have heard those words and been part of communities where those words are repeated. There's value in having words to say over and over again that bind a community to each other and to a tradition. But throughout all of this history, our religious forebearers, the Unitarians and the Universalists, largely refrained from developing formal creeds. Well, they tried a few times now and again and held fast to their idea of freedom of belief, the right of conscience, everyone's right to make up their own mind religiously, to hold their own bag of belief. I've been thinking a lot about creeds and covenants recently at People's Church and within Unitarian Universalism more broadly. And I was expecting a clear distinction. Creeds are beliefs, covenants are behavior, the promises we make to each other. And then it all got a lot murkier than I expected. We are a proudly non-creedal tradition. We have martyrs who died for the right to change one's mind religiously, for the right to keep our belief bags open and discerning what we should be adding or taking away. And yet, I think in part because we live in a culture where Christianity is the dominant religion, we struggle with this. The UUA principles can function a lot like a creed, especially with people newer to our faith, our children and our newcomers. We exist in a culture where Christianity is the dominant faith, and when people learn we exist, they usually ask first, so what do you believe? What do Unitarian Universalists believe? What do you believe over there at People's Church? If we lived in a world or a society where it wasn't Christianity as the dominant faith, the questions might be different. What do you do? What are your rituals and practices? But this is where we are. And so then I often turn to the principles, or at least some paraphrase of them, because they have a lot of big and challenging words in them, and say things like, we believe that all people are important and the world is all connected. But the principles are not a creed. They do not bind us individually. They are principles that our congregation as a whole, along with all of the other Unitarian Universalist congregations, covenant to affirm and promote. We promise to make our collective actions align with those principles. Is that the same as to believe them each as individuals? It isn't, but that nuance there is thorny. It is thorny. We can covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, for example, without requiring everyone in the church to sign up for that particular idea. That is complicated, though, and hard to explain to my 6-year-old, hard to explain to someone who has no grounding in our faith. It's as complicated as the language in those principles themselves. I remember when I was about 8 being taught the word inherent in a Sunday school class. It was not one of the more fun Sundays in RE, I can tell you. And I know we are not doing that to our children anymore. But this is tricky and this is hard. And I don't have a clear conclusion, only more questions and more wonderings. How do the principles serve us when we claim to be a non-creedal church? If the principles shouldn't be the first thing we turn to when we decide when we describe who we are, what should we turn to? Are they filling a hole that needs filling? What else should be there? How do we hold our principles collectively as a congregation without allowing them to bind each of us individually, even though many of us individually also agree with them? What are better ways to describe Unitarian Universalism to curious outsiders and to our children? Perhaps we begin with our promises and say they are promises instead of beliefs. And just to make this even more complicated, the UUA is currently undergoing efforts to study and probably revise Article 2, that whole section I read to you earlier. It will be different. And I have never known a Unitarian Universalism without the 7 principles. And I'm fascinated to see who we are when the words change. I invite you all into this murkiness with me. I don't know the answers, but I know when more of us think about the questions, we come to better conclusions than any of us do alone. Maybe that's part of the promises we make here. I invite you into the long tradition of folks trying to figure out how we balance the gifts of freedom with the commitments and promises that we make to each other to be a community. When we question and wonder and challenge ideas, may we know that we are carrying on a tradition that has been part of our tradition for centuries upon centuries. And may we know that when we make our bonds of union, our covenants, we are joining in with people ancient and modern from all over the world who have made similar promises, used a similar form to speak about what is most important to them. We join ourselves together, so goes our bond of union at People's Church, hoping to help one another in all good things and advance the cause of pure and practical religion in the community. We base our union upon no creed test, but upon the purposes herein expressed, and welcome all who wish to join us to help establish truth, righteousness, and love in all the world. May it be so. May we make it so. And amen.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing our closing song, number 318, We Would Be One.
As we end, I remind those of you who are with us on Zoom that there is small group conversation for about 15 minutes. You have to bring your own coffee, but it's a good place to be if you wish. And I give our final words today to our children. Participate. Be kind and nice. Use kind words. Treat everyone equally. Be fair. Be good listeners. Take care of your needs. Stay safe. Stay together. Share discoveries. Go in peace and go in love.